Going to be starting at about the 2-minute 15-second mark. Just getting some things together. If you'd like to, feel free to fast forward to 2 minutes 15 seconds and we will kick off this podcast.
But I don't know if that can erase all the past and the pettiness, a reflection of the emptiness. Hilarious, you think you're worth my time, you're delirious, mysterious, because you hide behind a fake exterior. Inferior, you know I'll always be a bit superior. Get off of me, this ain't no humble brag.
Doing a little multitasking here, some research on other stories, and communicating with a few of our previous listeners while preparing to remaster a story that has been told on the podcast before. Going to be remastering our very first official podcast due to audio issues. Once again, 2 minute 15-second mark. We'll kick it off. Thoughts in my head, a collage and they spread. I'll be great one day, going off of my meds. No, I'm not giving up, no, I'm not giving in. I will make it to the top, taking off in the wind. I gotta make it, I'm saving every day to taste it. I'm patient, but my mind, it can... And welcome to the Caveman Chronicles Paranormal Podcast. This is going to be episode 7.1. It is UFO UAP. It will be a remastered version of the very first official podcast that was put out on the channel, UFO, UAP, and Unexplained Phenomenon. It's going to be a much shorter version. It's going to cover just the two personal experiences of my own, as well as mentioning one of another individual that grew up in the same neighborhood with a similar experience to one of these. With that said, I'll dive into it. The first of the two stories that was in that podcast was a saw blade. Now, down below the original video, you're going to see the saw blade and the UFO. That was either intended to be the original title, or I'm not sure what I did. Being the first video, it's different than you see in the thumbnail. But this story is the saw blade. Both of these stories take place in upstate New York. Johnson City was the location, if anybody's familiar. It is in Broome County, closest major cities. It's adjacent to Binghamton. Syracuse is maybe an hour and a half north. That's one that people may have heard of. If anybody's listening that is out of the country, this is the United States as well. I feel strange saying that, but you know, I'm not arrogant enough to think that we're the only people in the world. So this is upstate New York, USA. The city was called Johnson City. The time that it took place was the early 1990s. I was probably 10 years old, give or take a little, for both of these stories. Recollections, as they were called, in a book that I had self-published about these two stories, as well as many others that happened in this neighborhood. Now, let's get right into it. The saw blade. Now, the saw blade this was interesting, and to this day, I I still can't figure out what it was. The other kid that I had mentioned that I'd grown up with, his name was Dominic. He, come to find out, had a experience with, and quote-unquote saw blade, because that's all this can be described as, in that neighborhood. And by saying saw blade, I don't mean UFO shaped like a saw blade, unless you're using UFO as just an unidentified flying object, then yes. But this wasn't assumed to be a spacecraft of any kind. When I say saw blade, I quite literally mean saw blade, like a giant, round in diameter with curved teeth saw blade that you would see at a wood mill, cutting logs going through a lumber mill. Excuse me. I think that's interchangeable. I don't know. I'm not a carpenter, so. But I was out front in the road out front of my house. I don't remember at the time. My father was probably working. My mother as well. Back then, family always lived close by. I had a couple of aunts across the street. My uncle, cousins lived up the road. We were pretty close living together. And my cousin and I are outside playing soccer. We look up into the sky, and maybe 400 feet above the trees. Hard to judge how big this thing was, but probably 4 feet, maybe 3 feet, I don't know, in diameter. It would depend on height. But not gaining speed, not losing speed, not gaining or losing altitude. A saw blade came from behind the houses behind us, parallel to the ground, looking at the flat side. Looked just like a saw blade that I had described, and it went overhead, across the street, across behind the houses behind us, over the tracks, beyond the factories behind that, and just vanished out of sight. That was that experience. I could ramble on about it, but there's no explaining that. And the next short story here with the kid that I mentioned, Dominic, he grew up in that neighborhood, like most of the people that I know. We've known each other 35 years, or since middle school. We've all stayed in contact, and him and I are talking, and he's like, "Oh, I had an experience with that too. I was out in my backyard around the same time frame, come to find out, and a saw blade came across out of nowhere, like over his side fence, parallel to him, so teeth to the ground, skipped across the back of the yard some, and off over the other fence." Like I said, this is the short versions of everything. I would dive into that even more so than I am, but that's the gist of it. And what I want to get from this, if anybody's listening, is, has anybody ever experienced anything with, I don't know how else to put it, but a sentient saw blade, or a saw blade acting under its own power? I don't know what it was. This still baffles me. I would have thought maybe I was crazy, but to get another story from somebody else of the exact same nature in that very strange neighborhood, lots of things with Endicott Johnson was in that neighborhood growing up, and they were big factories. Lots of strange things happened there during this later industrial boom in Johnson City, New York, in the early 90s. Well, the boom was before that, but we were living in the aftermath of that growth. There was a lot going on, railroads, industry. And with that said, I'm going to move right along to the next one. That was the saw blade incident from me and from Dominic. So if anybody else has anything to add about a saw blade, please comment. I would absolutely love to hear that. The next thing is my UFO experience, and I'm going to be brief on this because, I don't know who's going to believe it. At this point, I don't know if I do, but cousin and I were at my house. Mother was off. I think she had went to bingo. We had family in the neighborhood. Father also worked security in the evenings. He was gone. We had a new computer. We were playing with that computer. like I'm right now fidgeting with the computer. And, this was an older one. I think it was an Apple something. Numbers, letters, like alphanumeric, started scrolling across the screen like crazy. Pulled the plug out. From what I remember, it kept doing it. Cousin freaked out, ran to the back room. I hadn't seen him. I was compelled to go look out the window, which I did. I went behind this recliner that was at a little corner of the second floor apartment that I was in, that stuck out of the house and angled a little bit so I could see across the street. The tree out front of the house, across the street, over the houses, and I had seen what looked to me like a craft, and I was mesmerized. I saw this. I remember not necessarily being afraid, but then seeing it open, something had came up out of it. Not like the grays you see on X-Files. Maybe similar, little paler green, like non-luminescent type being. I don't know. I just remember locking eyes, and then I had come to in the middle of the living room floor, and it was, I don't know, 20 minutes, 45 minutes. I can't remember that exactly, but time was lost, and I was confused, and went to find my cousin, and he had no idea what happened. He was hiding in the back room, like I said. And that was that. That's, the quick rundown of what happened. And I didn't get into it as much as the first time. I figured, I don't know who's going to end up ever hearing this, and people, if they do, you can write in. You might have your own story, or, maybe you just think I'm crazy. Maybe I am crazy. But I want to lend something to that story, to the UFO story. I don't know if this helps to legitimize it or not, but I have a memory in fourth grade of another girl that went to school. She was homeschooled in fourth grade, and out of everybody that I know, for some reason, I'm the only one that can remember her. And you're going to see how this ties into the UFO story, and I'll try to be as quick with this one as well. But I remember going to see her the last day that she was going to be in town. I went to her house. Her father was there. Sister as well. Said something about the yearbook. Father ended up telling me that they were homeschooled, going back to their country, which was Mexico, and showing me a picture of the great tree, which I think is in California, that you can drive through. And there's kind of this eerie feeling attached to the memory, but not so much him, but looking back over my shoulder at the sister. And the only thing that stands out with that is when saying goodbye, myself and this girl from fourth grade girlfriend, I know that's cute, but I'm leaving, and we ended up behind this. I don't know what this is, a memory, so almost like a dream. I can't really. But the part of that was that we were like hiding behind like the recliner in the living room. I don't remember where the family was, but that was like our little sneak back there, goodbye smooch before I went to leave, and then that's the end of the memory. I don't have any memory of this person. Her name was Shasta, and there's no memory of the person prior to or after that. And here's how it ties together quickly. I, at this point, do not think that memory is real, or any of those people were real. That recliner attached to both what happened to me and to the memory of being behind that, and then a different situation than what actually happened when I was in my home behind the recliner. I think this was either a memory created by myself because of my mind not being able to process what it was that had happened, or it was an implanted memory. Maybe a combination of the two. Does that sound crazy? Yeah, probably. Probably sounds crazy. Sounds crazy to me. And I've given the absolute short, to the point story for both of those. The saw blade that I saw in that neighborhood when I lived in that very house out front. My buddy Dominic's experience, who lived mere blocks away with the same saw blade type object. And then what I recall to be alien abduction. I don't know how else to put it. You guys can, roast me in the comments if you want. I'm not sure. I might end up roasting myself. And then that memory, that implanted, still to this day, vivid memory, assumed implanted or created, or maybe real memory of that individual, Shasta, that seemed to correlate with the UFO just because it started and ended behind a recliner, and it has that feeling attached to it. So with all that said, you guys can take this, take it with a grain of salt, tear it apart. I'd love to hear comments if anybody has anything similar, especially in that area, the eastern Johnson City, western Binghamton, New York area from the early 90s. I know there are a lot of stories in Broome and Tioga County throughout the years, all the way from like the 30s. There are some documented 60s, the 90s. To this day, it's a real hot spot for stuff. So that's it, guys. This was Caveman. I've remastered the UFO UAP stories. I've given it to you short and sweet. So we're gonna ease out here. It's been great. I hope that somebody listens to this, leaves a comment, maybe make me feel less crazy. I don't know. And that's all I got for you. So this is Caveman signing off, and hope to hear from you on the next one. Cheerio.